Over the last few years, fasting has grown exponentially in awareness and interest. There's intermittent fasting, block fasting, water fasting, dry fasting, fat fasting, fast mimicking, so many different ways to fast. What's the best one for you? How do you know? And how do we create a fasting program that's actually going to improve your health for years and years to come? That's what we're going to cover in this video. So this is our sixth and final video on a series that we've been doing on specifically hormesis and viewing the different therapies that many of us are choosing to do or to offer to our clients and patients, and how do we view those therapies and strategies through the hormetic lens. So if you haven't seen the rest of these videos, especially if you haven't seen video 1, please watch that first, because in that video, we cover in detail, number 1, stress, the 3 sources of stress, how some stressors are good for us and some stressors are bad for us, and ultimately how the conversation about stress is required to really even understand what hormesis is. And then we went through multiple different stages of how to understand hormesis, the hormetic curve, and how to view these different therapies through a hormetic lens, making sure that we're keeping people safe and we're getting the most out of the time, money, energy, and effort that people are putting into these strategies, so that over years and years to come, we're only seeing health improve and that we're not pushing people too hard or ultimately too gently. And by using the hormetic curve as our gauge, we could know where somebody is and how hard we can push them when we need to back off, and how to create a meaningful program around that. So for this video, we're sticking with those same concepts, but now we're applying it to fasting. So there's so many different ways to fast. There's intermittent fasting, which is basically just creating a window where you're condensing all of your eating into a smaller period of time. That gives you this larger period of time where no food consumption is happening. 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, 20 hours, 1 meal a day. These are all different strategies for intermittent fasting. Then there's block fasting, where now we're going days without eating food. Predominantly, it's a water fast. You're consuming water throughout that time, but really no other food or nutrients. There's fast mimicking, where you're doing a block fast. You are consuming some type of either food or food substitute, but it's low enough in calorie, it's low enough in carbohydrate. It's just enough to sustain you to feeling a little bit better during those fasts, especially if you've never fasted before. It's a way to start doing block fasts with a little bit more ease. Then there's dry fasting, which is literally not even consuming water during those fasts. Those are typically shorter, but their impact could be greater. And then there are strategies for combining a lot of these different fasting methods to create a program of fasting. This video is not going to be all the details of every different fast that there is, but it is going to be a way to help understand how to apply fasting to somebody, how to help somebody grow their fasting muscles, how to become more fat adapted, but do it in a way that's very safe and very effective, making sure that throughout that time, they're improving their health, not pushing things too hard where their health is starting to fail because they're not nourishing themselves through food. I want to go back to thinking through the continuum that we've been using for the past few videos. And let's say on one end of that continuum is, I eat whatever I want, whenever I want, as often as I want. On the other end of that continuum is, I've stopped eating, I'm not consuming any nutrients right now at all. Even if fasting is a new conversation for you, ultimately everybody fasts. There's some period of time, particularly let's say on a normal schedule, that you've consumed your last amount of food for the day, you've gone to sleep, and now hours have passed and nothing has gone into your mouth. Technically, on some level, that's a fast. And then in theory, in the morning, you eat breakfast, break fast. That is the breaking of the fast. So we all have this window where we're not consuming nutrients. When we start talking about intermittent fasting, we're saying, well, we're going to build that window up. So we're going to really condense the amount of time we're eating, and that sleep period is going to start to grow, where either I cut my calories off earlier in the day before bed, or I wake up and I have a whole bunch of hours in the morning where I'm still not eating yet. So that window of non-eating grows and grows and grows. Again, there's tremendous benefit to this whole process. I'm not going to go into all the details, but what I will say is intermittent fasting, in my mind, begins at around hour 12, which means, let's say you had dinner at 7 o'clock at night. That was the last thing that you ate. You're not having breakfast until 7 a.m. So 12 hours is really a bare minimum. And I would argue that really all of us need to be doing 12 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, as often as possible. That's like the bare minimum of giving your body a break from food. When we really start talking about intermittent fasting, we start talking about a 14, 16, 18, 20-hour window where our food consumption really starts getting condensed into a much smaller period of time. So if we're going to start applying some of these concepts to the hormetic window, if you've never fasted a day in your life, and this is all brand new to you, jumping into a 5-day water fast would be such an extreme step that you would bypass the entire hormetic window. You'd be pushing your body way too hard. And if you've ever seen somebody fasting who's not adapted to it, what you see is their energy levels, their mood levels, their ability to function really plummet over those few days. There are definitely strategies for going into this whole process in a way that continually pushes the envelope, but does it slowly and safely, and even allows somebody to work towards, let's say, a 5-day fast, and not only have their mood, energy, and health not decline, but actually have their mood, their energy, and their health only improve during that time. And if you're doing it that way, you could say that you know that you're building that person's fasting muscle and you're staying within the hormetic umbrella. And as soon as you start to see consequences of fasting, you now know that you've exceeded the line. One of the reasons that the ketogenic diet has actually been so popular recently is that that's a great way to start somebody being exposed to a fast mimicking experience and begin the journey of preparing for fasting. Why is that the case? Because ketogenic diet removes so much of the carbohydrate that the body starts burning fat. And ultimately, when you're not eating food, but you're still alive, the reason you're alive is because you're burning stored body fat for fuel instead of relying on what you put in your mouth. If you happen to be a person whose mood and energy level is very strongly tied to what you're putting in your mouth, you are not fat adapted. You are running primarily on glucose, and pushing the fasting window very quickly is going to be very stressful for your body. So to start that journey, you could very simply start moving into a higher fat, lower carbohydrate, moderate protein diet, which is going to start preparing your body to get better at burning fat for fuel. The further along you get in that line, the more you'll start to see that your mood and your energy start becoming separate from your food. You can go much longer hours without seeing dips in energy or dips in your mood. You know that you're starting to become more fat adapted. Once you start to see some of those changes, now you can start building your fasting window. And while you do that, you can start skipping breakfast and delaying when your first meal is, when your break fast is. And as you do that, and if you do it slowly and you listen to your body, you'll notice that in those mornings, you're clearer, your mood is more stable, you have more energy. Your body at that time is running on fat. And there's, again, enormous benefits to that. At some point, you start to get a little hungry. You could say, okay, it's time to break that fast. And then you can build from 12 hours to 14 to 16 to 18. You can build that fasting window and you can shrink that eating window more and more as you start to get more adapted. If as you're doing that, you're feeling better, you're sleeping better, your health is improving, your energy is improving, your clarity is improving, you know that you're staying in that hormetic window. You know that you're going at a good speed. If you're starting to crash, if you're getting angry, if you're being irritable, if your mood is unstable, if your sleep is deteriorating, if your heart rate variability is going down, you know that you've exceeded that and now you're starting to push too hard, too fast. The same is true as you start to expand from an intermittent window to one meal a day to a block fast. As long as you're listening to your body and you're thinking about it through the continuum that we keep talking about, and you're looking at it through the lens of hormesis, you should be able to tell, here's a stressor, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm only nudging the line a little bit further because overall, long term, I'm feeling better and better as time is going. And so as you start to incorporate new fasting techniques and you view it through that lens, you'll be crystal clear how quickly you could move, how hard is it on your body, is your health improving or is it not, when do I back off, when do I push? It's all based on how you're doing on that curve and understanding the relationship between the hormetic curve and your health. We've done a video on diet variation and hormesis. And now that you're understanding where fasting fits that, and you now understand where diet variation fits that same realm, now you can start combining different diet variations with different fasting techniques. And now we're using two different therapies, the type of food you're eating with the timing of the food that you're eating. And we can create different challenges of hormesis by manipulating both of those variables simultaneously. Once you've now intermittent fasted for a little while, you've tried a couple different block fasts, you're going to find a rhythm around that, and it's going to start to get easier. So there's other ways to challenge fasting too, like if you've been skipping breakfast as an example, and your fasting window is from the time you eat dinner through the night, through the early morning, and now you're just delaying when you're breaking that fast in late morning, early afternoon, that's one way to do it. That's the way that most people do it. Once that gets easy, again, you're going to stop benefiting from some of those changes, which means one way to challenge that is to flip the clock. In other words, wake up in the morning, eat breakfast right away, and then have a snack, and then eat lunch, and then have another snack, but cut your food off early afternoon. And now for the rest of the afternoon and the evening, and then throughout the night, you're fasting on that side of the clock, the later part of the day instead of the earlier part of the day. That's another simple, I say simple, but it's not easy. A lot of people, especially emotionally, are going to be challenged by flipping the schedule that way. But that's another way to shift the hormetic curve using intermittent fasting alone and still reaping tons of benefits. I think a lot of you, even by doing that, are going to see improved levels of sleep and improved energy in the later part of the day by doing that. Because now you're consuming most of your calories while you're awake. And when your body's starting to kind of calm down and get ready for bed, you're not stuffing it full of food. You're actually already burning through a majority of your day's caloric intake. Another important thing to say about fasting is not about caloric restriction. In other words, this isn't a way just to lose weight and reduce the quantity of food you're eating. You're reducing your timing, you're eating less often, but you're not necessarily consuming less calories. And I say that because it becomes very easy when fasting becomes a habit that you start to not be as hungry. And now what you're going to find is you're not as hungry and you're eating less, so your calories are dropping. Your fasting windows are getting really large, your eating windows are getting really small, you're generally not hungry, and now your calories are low. That's going to backfire. The goal of this is not having less calories, eating less food. It's really just eating less often and giving your body a break from food, but still making sure you're fully nourished in the time that you're eating. In the time that you're eating, we call that feasting, versus the time that you're not eating, which is fasting. So once you get a rhythm around all of these different techniques, you can find versions of this that work really well for you. Here are some examples. 5-1-1, 5 days of intermittent fasting, 1 day a week of 1 meal a day, and 1 day a week of feasting. In that feasting day, you're really not even intermittent fasting. You could eat 3 or 4 meals a day. You could eat like a normal person for that day. You still don't want to eat whatever you want, whenever you want. You want to keep it healthy, obviously, but you could really undo the entire fasting window in that time. Another one would be 4-2-1, 4 days of intermittent fasting, 2 days of 1 meal a day, spaced out, and a feasting day, 1 day where you break the whole fasting concept altogether. There's different versions of how to incorporate, let's say, intermittent fasting, feasting, and 1 meal a day strategies. And then you have the opportunity to do block fasting periodically. So as an example, I typically do a 1 meal a day once a week. It's usually on Mondays. I do 5 days of intermittent fasting pretty consistently, and I have 1 feast day. The intermittent fasting days and the feast day vary. I like to place my feast day strategically with other activities. Maybe it's a family outing, maybe it's a business trip, or something that I know that I'm going to want to eat whenever and whatever I want in that time. My OMAD, or my 1 meal a day, is typically Mondays because I'm almost always home on Mondays. It's a busy day, and it's just easy for me to keep that as my main 24-hour day. And then the intermittent fasting days will vary. Then quarterly, I do a 3 to 5 day water fast as a way to make sure that every quarter I'm doing a good clean out. So that's just one example. There's a lot of ways you could break it up, but I wanted to give you some feedback on one of the versions that I do. I hope this all helps. I hope this helps you understand fasting, how to grow your fasting muscles, most importantly, how to view fasting through the hormetic lens so that you can understand how hard and how fast you can push, what signals you could be using to know that you've pushed too hard or that you're not pushing hard enough, and then how to grow your fasting under the hormetic window, allowing you to become healthier, more resilient, more fat adapted over time, and improving your health for years and years to come. That completes our series on hormesis and different strategies for using hormesis for health and wellness. If you've missed any of the previous videos in this series, please watch them. I think they're going to add a tremendous amount of value for your understanding of how to apply these concepts in other strategies for health and well-being, which in turn will only help you be a healthier human, or for you to help other people increase their health for years and years to come. Thanks for your attention. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.